Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to begin our presentation on different ecosystems, different types of animals, birds present at Pelican Sound. Our guest today, our guest speaker is Brian Beckner, whom you may know very well from all the native nation, I have trouble pronouncing today, nature tours that he gives around our property. And without further ado, Brian, you can take it away.
All right, thank you. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for this fun little presentation. The focus of the presentation today will be talking about birds and wildlife and the nature that would surround our backyards, and specifically your area right here at Pelican Sound. So with that, I always like to give a little disclaimer so everybody knows a little something about me. I'm originally from Fort Worth, Texas, where the roadrunners run wild and rampant, and tumbleweeds, and we have bluebonnets as one of our state flowers. So if the accent throws you off, I definitely am from the South and not from the Northeast. And here I am as a kid, grew up with Dad out there on golf courses playing golf, as well as observing all the nature and the wonderful aspects around the golf course the entire time growing up. And you can tell at an early stage, I started building birdhouses, and who knows what habitat that was for at that time. It was just a lot of fun being able to create something. And down in the center there, you can see me. I was with my grandparents here in Naples. That's actually at the Conservancy, and we'd been on a trip where we had come across some whalers, and that's a vertebrate from a baleen whale, as well as the baleen that the biologist there is holding that we donated to the center. So one of the birds a lot of people ask about is if we truly do get ruby-throated hummingbirds here in our region, and that answer is yes. We do get the ruby throats. They are here year-round with us. We get them more prolifically whenever you have these beautiful Hong Kong orchids that are blooming, which you see the ruby throat sitting in there. And your Hong Kong orchids all surround the area that used to be the tennis courts. And all throughout the development here, I see Hong Kong orchids planted in people's yards. And they're a lot of fun to be able to see. I personally have a Hong Kong orchid myself, but I have so many flowering ornamentals in my yard. Even with my hummingbird feeder, I get reduced activity on the feeder itself because they like the trees and the native pollen and nectar that they can obviously get there. So we'll talk about ospreys as well. You all have so many wonderful opportunities here at the club where ospreys do nest on your man-made platforms, as well as your pine trees that you all have, and they have found those wonderful native settings. In this particular picture, you can tell that the female is there. And the reason why we know this is a female versus a male, if you look right in the center breastplate there where it's all white, you see the brown feathers. That denotes that it's a female for us, whereas a male has pure white down the front of the breastplate. And we know that both of these are adults because they both have yellow eyes. Whereas if it was a juvenile, both would have amber colored eyes. And the feathers here on the primary area would actually be mottled with black and white. Here's an osprey fully stretched just after it caught a wonderful meal and was flying away with it. Something really neat about osprey, this particular osprey, if you look right here on the lower foot, you can see there it has a band on it. So this bird at one point in time had been captured, either it be due to an injury or due to any research, and they banded it so that way they can always collect more data about it later on. One thing fun about ospreys is you notice their feet whenever they grasp themselves their meal from a lake. They'll always take one talon and have it forward and one backwards and articulate that fish so it's pointing head first, so that way it's aerodynamic in flight, making it easier for them. And they do have 4 toes. And what's so interesting is of those 4 toes, there's always one backwards. But in flight, whenever they're trying to carry a fish, they do articulate that other talon. So that way there's 2 talons forward and 2 back, being able to hold on to their prey. And we may get into talking about tactile feeders as well. I know you have roseate spoonbills that love to hang out in different areas around the club. One specific area is to the lakes number 9 the river number 9 to the left of the green, that pond down there that dries out would look very similar to this depicted picture here. The roseate spoonbills are the ones that are all pink, and all of these are juveniles. The eldest one would be this one over here on the side that has more pronounced pink color to it with a little bit of black on the head. Then the other two species behind it are your wood storks. And wood storks right now are nesting. They're having reduced amount of nesting that's out at Courchand Swamp Sanctuary. So if we were to go looking for them, we would be out at the sanctuary close to those regions where those birds would actually be choosing to be their roost and nesting site. And being that they are shallow water feeders, that's where we try to always look for wood storks and roseate spoonbills. We're not looking in the deep waters where we would go find those osprey. Here's a great video that will depict the actual feeding process in a shallow area, very similar to what you all have been able to see here there on number 9, as well as back on river number 4. I have found them in shallow water back there in the same process, just with their bills down, and all they're doing is combing along, being a tactile feeder. The sensory glands would be picking up on any sort of movement from a fish or a worm or a mollusk, and then they would snap closed and swallow. So another bird that many of us like to see, a little bit more challenging if you happen to be a person that likes to feed birds, are painted buntings. And they are here right now in migration with other warblers that we would be finding. This particular style feeder is a caged Audubon feeder, and inside is all millet. This is actually at my house. About 7 years ago, we noticed that we had buntings inside of our oak trees, and immediately I went out and started moving the feeders around and changing the type of feed to see if we could encourage even more to them. And lo and behold, we have 3 feeders now in the backyard, and they always have white millet in them, and we're able to attract them typically beginning in October, and they'll stay with us till about April. In the birding world, always remember that the male has the brighter color. So he's going to be considered like the rainbow bird to us. And the females in the painted buntings are all going to be like a little lime. The reason why females in the birding world are more of a pale color is so that way they can naturally protect the nest and young. And the males have to be bright and pretty to try to attract these wonderful females. And here is a video for you about the painted buntings, what it looks like. And yes, they can enter these type feeders. Don't mind the George Strait playing in the background. Must have been one of the days I was painting. It's about the only time I get excited. You have to turn on some country music for me and I'll paint. But these birds will sit here and feed. About the only other bird that will get inside of these cages is a northern cardinal. Red-belly woodpeckers can only hold on to the outside. They would have to stretch to the inside to be able to get their food resource then. But these are really nice universal type feeders that I would highly recommend for people if they're interested in trying to feed birds and being very eclectic. You can also get American goldfinches to go inside of these, and it gives them a little sense of security and privacy when they're in there foraging. So I know we did have a sighting of Sandhill Cranes here at the club last year. They flew over top of us, and people always ask, why don't we see Sandhill Cranes on a regular basis? Well, they typically are not south of the Caloosahatchee River and west. So once you get east, if you were to take a drive out east on Courchand Road and you were to look in some of the agricultural field locations out there, you would be able to see Sandhill Cranes. This picture was actually taken off of Oil Well Road heading out towards Ave Maria. And you can see how they like to congregate in safety and numbers as well. So no feeder is squirrel proof, trust me. The Audubon feeder that I showed you a minute ago, it does have drastically reduced opportunities for squirrels getting into it because they cannot get through those small squares. But these silly little guys, they're able to weasel their way into just about anything. All right, so many of you may know a little bit of my background. I am originally by education and trade, a golf course superintendent, and was in the golf industry for 23 years. Prior to that, I grew up on golf courses, and so playing golf was my passion and my hobby at that point in time before I realized it was time to grow up and figure out what industry I wanted to be a professional in. And so with a simple depiction, a lot of our friends always thought that we're out there playing golf, and ownerships think that we're just burning up money left and right. Well, the golf pros thinking we're out there just mowing the yard, having fun every afternoon, and definitely whenever it rains and opens up cats and dogs, members want us to be able to part those waters so that way they can get out there and immediately play golf. In society, puts us in that depiction of Carl Spackler from Caddyshack. So what a golf course superintendent actually does is a whole lot more than just those 5 items. And hopefully we'll be able to share how they're able to balance ecosystems with other type measures and professional organizations that are out there to help us. And one of those specifically is Audubon International. You all are an Audubon International certified property here at Pelican Sound, and that certification is upheld by Johnny Ingram, your golf course superintendent, and his team. And their primary focus with Audubon International, which was established in 1987, was to deliver the high quality environmental education and to facilitate the sustainable management of land, water, wildlife, other natural resources in all places people live, work, and play, especially in the golf course industry. The National Audubon Society is completely different, and always want to make sure that we know the differences between those two. Our society was founded in 1905, is a remarkable industry as well, focused on to conserve and restore natural ecosystems, focusing on birds and their ecosystems, other wildlife and habitats for the benefit of humanity and Earth's biological diversities. So like I said, your property is a certified Audubon International certified property. And the 6 primary areas that a golf course superintendent would focus on in these programs is environmental planning, which usually takes in the beginning about 18 months of planning, being able to develop an entire portfolio for an understanding of what this property is. With environmental plans, either they could be very near in the proximity, or they could be further off in the future. It could be 5 and 10-year programs that they are looking to try to invest with and know that they can incorporate into their systems. As well, they have wildlife and habitat management, which comes into place with bird housing, and my footprint comes in here. As well, chemical use reduction and safety, water conservation, water quality, and outreach and education. So today is part of one of those outreach and education opportunities for the club. And here's another way that we're able to do that. Maybe many of you all have been on some of the birding and wildlife tours that we host here at the club. Down here in the front and center right here is my dear friend Brenda Brooks from CREW, which is Courchand Regional Ecosystem Watershed, a land management where she manages the 60,000 acres and helps to educate and understand the property and how its values are out there. And she's a great asset to us here at the club, as well being able to share her ideas and her wealth of knowledge with what you all have available here. Because you all have opportunities where you have gopher tortoises that are high and dry, all the way down to the river where we get manatees coming up inside the waterways back there. Here's another viewing location of the tour, and this was actually this week when we had our tour. I guess today's Thursday, it was yesterday here at the club, and shot that quick picture. And you can tell all of us are out there. We supply binoculars so that way you can see, hopefully be able to see what we are viewing as well off into a tree. And we talk about ecosystems that are high and dry and all the way down into the filter marsh areas. And we're over here on, I believe this is river number 5 at that point. So some of the key items for attracting birds and wildlife. This is where it really comes into fun because you're trying to put that puzzle together. Being that it's a golf course and a focus for the golf course, how is it you can draw other species around to bring them into your balanced ecosystem, into this urban green space? Number 1, food resources. And we're looking at insects that would be available, berries on native bushes, fish down in the lakes, and crustaceans that also would be down in the lakes. And those could be bivalves or monovalve type of crustaceans and or species that would be there in your lake systems. Number 2, you want shelter. So trees, plants, and native habitat where the birds and the wildlife would cohesively know right where to go to be able to take refuge. Either it be from a negative resource, or maybe it's just a positive resource and they're looking to be able to relax and take a nap during the day. Space. A golf course has consumed a lot of space, which is fantastic, but inside of a community such as this, it typically only takes up about 20 to 30% of what the land actually is. And being that it's open green space gives great opportunity for so many different type of species to be able to roam and have that area to be able to graze upon, to find their insects or to forage. Maybe it is on other type species for food. Then we have water, fresh for drinking and bathing and finding food within. When you put these 4 items together and you make sure that it's all in diversity, you typically can encourage a lot more wildlife to your site. So here's a fun little mammal that we do get to find. So I'm standing up in the space type area. I'm actually up on a tee box, and this bobcat came up out of the palmettos and was sitting right behind the grass lines. We were about 25 feet from each other whenever I shot this picture. And once again, if there wasn't shelter on this particular location, just like what you all have of your palmettos and pushing up to some of the native preserves, these type species would not be as recognizable and willing to share the urban green space here with you. Absolutely wonderful lake resources that you all have here as well. Even though we have lakes here in our region, they're actually detention ponds, all that fall under the South Florida Water Management permit for your surface water and the amount of water on property, which could either be used for just drainage, storage of water, and or use of water for irrigation permits. So the health of these lakes comes from all of this beautiful aquatic plant systems that you all have throughout your entire community as well. And you can see there's spike rush in there, some arrowhead, pickerel weed, which has a beautiful purple bloom onto it. And you get multiple different styles of birds that would utilize this area. If I was an osprey, I would be way out here in this deeper water. Some birds, like a green heron, may try to disguise himself throughout this vegetation. But if I was a heron or an egret or maybe a spoonbill or a wood stork, I would be over here in this very shallow area right next to where the grass comes down. And those buffer zones there, they help to be able to slow velocity of water down, as well as they are filter marsh areas and filtration opportunities for any sort of negative impurity that could enter from the golf course, the roadway, sidewalks, or home sites. So vegetation provides shelter, food, nesting, and perching opportunities. And we have a lot of live oak trees around this property. We have pine trees. We also have ourselves lots of the palmettos and then native trees such as your cypress as well. So for the hawks, they love to be able to perch up here in these areas and forage. You get warblers galore, red-belly woodpeckers. All of your owls would utilize the oak trees and the pines and the cypress for being able to roost and perch from within. And then we also have one wood duck box, which we're overly anxious, hopefully one day, to be able to get wood ducks. We're probably going to have to start moving that box around to different locations and see if we can get it more hidden to maybe where they would show up and utilize it. So one plant that you all have natively all around this property, as well as you've planted some and incorporated into the programs here, are Dahun Hollies. And with the Dahun Hollies, one specific bird that's down here only this time, very short window of time frame of usually about February to April, are the cedar waxwings. So whenever you see that red berry, and not on the Brazilian peppers, so don't get it confused with that one, but this is a Dahun Holly, which is your native tree, and you'd see the cedar waxwings there eating and enjoying those berries. Some other smaller birds that you would be able to see are your blue-gray gnatcatchers and your common yellowthroats, which would be down inside of your marsh areas. Say like if you were on right of River 1 and Sound number 9, you would see a lot of those common yellowthroats in those areas. And then blue-headed vireos. All of these are migratory birds. We do see some blue-gray gnatcatchers in the summer months sticking around year-round, but it's not as prevalent. And always remember, there's always an alligator that's ever present inside of a lake system. We're down here in southeastern United States where we do have alligators, and especially down here in this warmer climate here in Florida, we do have alligators. And we always like to remind people, remember that whatever body of water there is, never discount that there could be one alligator. And if you ever come across a situation like this, these are 4 siblings all sitting right on top of each other, just trying to stay warm. And where they might be, always be on the lookout for mom. So, why birds? Well, they're vital insights on the general state and quality of the natural environment. They're indicator species for us. They provide insect control, rodent control, they're pollinators, they're seed dispersers, and ecosystem servants for us. And did you know that birding ranks top 10 in most popular hobbies in the world? And that could be everywhere from looking at birds to taking trail hikes for birds, bird feeders, bird baths, taking pictures of birds, or even just taking exotic trips, being able to go and see birds, or maybe just sitting in your backyard and listening to birds as well. So what is your point of view? This is where it always gets very fun. This is a direction looking out of a birdhouse, out into what its location would be. This is actually inside of an eastern screech owl box. And if I was the female inside the box sitting with eggs or with the young, if I was the male, I would be sitting in the sable palm right across from her or up inside the pine tree, providing my safety and shelter for her and the food resources. So size versus style when we start talking about birdhouses. On the right, whenever we get into the stylish style birdhouses, that's my sister's farm in North Texas. And they have all of these beautiful wicker style birdhouses there. And we never seem to get any birds there. And I always tell her, you know, sister, you have to be functional, just not in style with these things. So the birdhouses that you see on the left, you'll see each one is a different size entrance hole, different size cavity, and that's what gives us our opportunities with all the different type of birds available. So what we did is I sent a bunch of birdhouses out to my sister at her farm, and then whenever I flew in town one year, we reestablished everything for her, and we took all of her pretty houses down and put up functional houses, and next thing you know, we're able to get birds nesting on her site as well. So cavity nesting birds. So some of the most common ones for us in Florida are eastern bluebirds, brown-headed nuthatches, which is not as common, but they are here, Carolina wrens, red-bellied woodpeckers, all other woodpeckers that we'd have available, great crested fly catchers, eastern screech owls, purple martins, wood ducks, and a few others. And down in the bottom left, you can see that's that little owlet. That is an eastern screech owl that happened to fall out of one of the nests. And so we were able to be right there and able to recover it and put it back up in there and allow it to be back with its family again. So here at Pelican Sound, you all have a very extensive birdhouse program. I believe in total there's 48 birdhouses and multiple Osprey platforms that you have. And how we are able to label some of these, and you'll see that they each have a little acronym, which is a box ID, and it kind of gives you an idea of what they are, on which hole location they're at, and then their species that we're trying to attract. So anything from a wood duck to a purple martin to ospreys to woodpeckers and flycatchers, Carolina wrens, and an eastern bluebird, if we can finally get them here on this site. Just north of you and just south of you in this same flyway corridor, we have eastern bluebirds, but they like very open pine flat areas. So they're very particular, just like the painted buntings we've talked about. And on the two other golf courses on the Sound and the lakes, this is what the profile looks like for establishing the birdhouses and their locations. The one thing that's really fun is these charts. If you ever need something to do, you go out and go on a scavenger hunt and see if you can find each and every one of these. And then here's what we do in collecting data. So yes, with Audubon International, the one thing they like to do is see that a birdhouse or a wildlife management program is set up. So then what we do is we go out and then collect the data from within these birdhouses. And on these charts, it just shows you, gives you a basic idea what's going on, either it be no activity or a red-bellied woodpecker roosting, or maybe the red-bellied woodpecker is inspecting the birdhouse. So the differences between those two, inspecting means the red-bellied woodpecker is pecking away and changing the entrance hole size. But on the inside of the birdhouse, we're not finding activity of it roosting there at night. And if they're roosting there, typically what they do is defecate inside, and we realize that then there's been that activity. So we also find wonderful things like this time of the year. There's eastern screech owls that are all nesting. And you can tell this was from 2020. The month that we began all of the observations was in March, which is a very great time of the year whenever we do begin most of our birdhouse surveying, from March all the way through to the end of July, because we're able to encompass getting any of the data that we are looking for the screech owls, to the woodpeckers, to the bluebirds, and then move it on out into the purple martins and such. So birdhouse maintenance is a must. People always ask, if we put up a birdhouse, should we do anything with it? Well, most certainly. You can tell there that particular birdhouse has weeds growing in it from the prior season, and a new bird that would come in there trying to nest would be discouraged and not interested in being there. Same for this purple martin house. This was a client that whenever I showed up, their martin house had broken out of deterioration. The primary brackets broke on it. and they weren't sure what they needed to do. So I was able to get in there, and during this nesting season, that birdhouse was actually occupied at that moment. So what we did is we just made sure it was secured to the pole because they had built their nest sideways inside of there and not upright like it traditionally should, and it got changed out then the following season. Here's another reason why we try to make sure we take care of these birdhouses, because this particular unit for a client, whenever I showed up and started working for them, we found birdhouses on property and they said they hadn't been used for many years. Well, a bird doesn't want to continue to nest after this is about 6 different seasons of building nests in here. And once it reaches that top profile, they don't feel the depth of the cavity any longer, so they will abandon mission in utilizing that birdhouse. So what we do is every fall we come in and we remove any nesting material, and we add some new fresh sheets in there for them to hopefully encourage new and fresh nesting for them. So here are some fun things that we do find inside the birdhouses. Yes, every now and again in the out of season time, we may get ourselves a squirrel. You never know, we may get bees, or we may even get a snake, and that's common in the out of season time. Once we get into season, here's ourselves a little eastern screech owl, and she would fight this squirrel out of the box and be able to win the battle and know that she had herself a roosting site. Sometimes we do get bees, and this comes into process maybe about 1%, if not less of the time at a particular property. And what we do, we just remove that birdhouse with our beekeeper and let them take it back to their farm and then integrate a new birdhouse. So here's an eastern bluebird for you. Depicting on the front there, that is your male eastern bluebird that has the bright blue colorations on them. And remember, then the female is dressed down with her colors. And this is considered sexual dimorphisms, meaning that the differences in between the two, that the male is going to have the brighter color and the female is going to have a more pale color. And it's amazing because you look at both of them, they're eating these June beetles and May beetles, and they are depleting grub populations right there. So there's some natural insect control. And here's taking a look inside the birdhouse. Here's that female eastern bluebird inside. And at times she may have anywhere from 3 to 6 eggs, and she could push anywhere from 2 to 3 broods a season. And here's some little hatchlings there. And you can tell that this particular location must have had a lot of longer grass being cut in their region. Maybe out some bahia grass or something that she brought in for nesting material. And in this one, you can tell that she has pine needles and some other palm fiber down in there for their nesting opportunities. Red-bellied woodpeckers. So these particular guys are the ones that everybody's asking, what bird is pecking on my house or pecking on the gutters, causing all that noise or causing that damage to my decorative soffit and fascias? And that is the culprit right here. This is a female, and we know it's a female because the red piece stops right here at head high, and then it's grayish brown to the front. If this was a male, it would go all the way to the front of the bill where you see that hash of red there as well. And very known for taking all of our nesting material out of the birdhouses, and they love to lay their eggs just flat on the floor inside the birdhouse. These are 2 different style settings that you might see the red-bellied woodpecker set up on. They'd be on a pine tree or maybe on a cypress. You may also find them onto a palm tree. And they only need to be about 10 to 12 feet high. And they actually will commandeer a box, and if it's even set up at 5 foot high, that would be intended for an eastern bluebird. Here's some of that tormenting. That's a male red-bellied woodpecker that is pecking away at an eastern screech owl box. And the reason why he's not going inside is because there is actually an eastern screech owl inside the box at that time. So here's another cavity-dwelling species. This is considered a great crested fly catcher. It's the male that's up top and then the female down low. And just faintly, you can tell the difference in the yellow that's on the breastplates, and that can define the female down below and the male up above. One thing really fun about great crested fly catchers is their nesting material that's inside the birdhouses. We can always tell whenever we open up the birdhouse who's in there nesting by what they bring in there. A great crested fly catcher brings snake skins, feathers from hawks and other birds, palm fiber, and sometimes they also have hair from squirrels and such that they may pick up. Very common to go for 4 to 6 eggs in their broods, and they're absolutely an enjoyable bird, very pretty song as well and fun to have around. And you ask, why snake skins? That's a natural predatory defense mechanism for them. So they're able to litter snake skins all across the nest. And if another bird or a species sticks their head in and they see the snake skin, they usually back out immediately because they're afraid that it might be a snake in there. All right, so eastern screech owls. These are so much fun. This is one of the hottest items right now. Everybody's on the look for. Our top raptors that are nesting are the bald eagles, great horned owls, barred owl, barn owls. Then we get into the eastern screech owls, and being that an eastern screech owl is a cavity dweller means that we can establish a birdhouse for them and help them go to it. This would be a very common type of a scenario that you would see around the property. I know many people that reached out to me already over the last month and sent me pictures of eastern screech owls in the birdhouses. And even in the middle of the day, they will sit here and perch and have their head poking out looking at you. How about this one? This happens to be an eastern screech owl that is inside of a knot on an oak tree. And the female is actually in her gray morph stage, and she's blending in absolutely perfectly right there with that oak tree, being that it has dark, the grayish dark color bark there. So inside of a birdhouse, this is what it would look like. If I was able to open up the birdhouse nice, calm, cool, and collective, I would be able to see the female in there, and she will either move off to the side to be able to show me very gently what she's sitting on, either it be eggs or it be young, and then she'll go right back to sitting on top of them and incubating those eggs. So here's inside of the birdhouse, and everybody wakes up and needs to yawn, right? So never know what I'm going to get inside these birdhouses, and it's always so much fun being able to see each and every one of them slightly different. So here's an eastern screech owl that's in the brown morph stage, and she has 4 eggs that she's tending to at this moment. And where would he be at this time? He's sitting outside the box. He's within that 15 to 30 foot range, providing that safety and security, but bringing her food resources as she needs it. And there they are together. So we're looking at a red morph stage. That's the female in front, and then the male sitting to the back corner in the brown morph stage. So you would see them in 3 different colors down here in the southeastern United States. Purple martins. You all have 2 purple martin houses here on property. One of them is to the eastern side over by the chipping green, and then the other one is over by right behind river number 1T there. It is absolutely wonderful. These particular birds, they do have the cage around those houses to help protect them from any sort of predators that would be coming in. And a predator we'd be talking about are owls and hawks, or maybe some other sort of a blackbird, a crow, or a grackle that would try to attack them. Inside of that unit, there's 12 cells, and with those 12 cells, it would be 24 adults, and they would fledge a typical clutch, which is 4 to 6 eggs, so you could have 72 to 96 birds living out of there at one time. They are absolutely wonderful insect eaters, and they're very communal, so they do not get too upset whenever we need to check those bird houses, or if you put it near a cart path where people were passing by, being as communal as they are, and being able to enjoy their time catching insects and raising young. So many people ask about the purple martins. Where do they come from? Well, from South America. They come to us from Brazil, and they migrate themselves up here into North America to be able to raise young. And we typically get to see them here in the southeastern United States first, arriving around January 1st. Then they're going to stay with us till about July 4th, and which then our colonies would migrate back to South America. If you happen to live up north or through the Midwest, you're not going to get your purple martins more until April, May, or June. It's the same colony coming from the central area there in Brazil, but they stay over land and migrate, passing through Mexico and Texas and coming up and dispersing in North America. Where our colonies here in southeastern, they fly back and forth across the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see that little cage a little bit better on that zoomed in picture there. So how do you identify the male to the female? These are males right here on the front that have all black, and these are females up here that have the white breastplates. Okay. Excellent. Here we go. All right, so the ultimate no-no. You never want to be able to put raw meat out for birds because they're not interested in raw meat, especially that particular unit right there, which is intended for eastern bluebirds. Those guys like to pick off insects, but more specifically, they like insects whenever they're out there foraging. The reason why this particular meet is here is there was an individual who lived in a house over to the side of the club, and they read in the newspaper about a red-tailed hawk that I had reed nested. All around this area are a bunch of pine trees. And it's a big open pine flat, and we'd get bluebirds year after year. Well, there was a red-tailed hawk, that nested, and one of them fell out of the nest. We re-nested it, and it got publicized. When it got publicized, then an individual nearby read the article, and he was like, well, I think I know where that is. And he came out every night, and he started putting meat on top of the birdhouses for us. Well, unfortunately, he deflected our bluebirds from going inside the bluebird houses. And the birds were not eating the raw meat because it's not what they like. They actually would want to chase. They want the wild catch. So they're going to be not looking for us putting hamburger patties or pork chops or anything like that out there. They would actually want something alive. All right, so non-cavity nesting birds. I get asked this question a whole lot. Brian, I would like to buy a birdhouse for northern cardinals or for a mockingbird, or could we do it for a blue jay? Well, unfortunately, there's a tremendous amount of birds that do not use birdhouses whatsoever, but what they do want is your vegetation. They would like to have your bougainvilleas or the arbicolas, or your oak trees, your pine trees, cypress trees, anything that they would be there for their vegetation opportunities to be able to build a nest, and they're called plate nesters. Even though we say non-cavity, that will define them yes or no, living inside of a structure. And it could just be an entrance hole inside of a cypress tree or a pine tree. Or is it going to be a plate nester where they're going to build their nest? All right, so bald eagles. I know this is a big topic of discussion right now because we are in the heart of bald eagle nesting season. And in this particular picture, you can see them. This is a male and a female. If they were sitting side by side, you would be able to identify the male and female easily because the female is 20% larger than the male, and that term is sexual reverse dimorphism. Both of them do look absolutely identical to each other. The one thing that is different about them is in their juveniles are a completely different color, which usually spoof a lot of us. So in this particular picture, here's your two adults, and then you have juveniles here at the front. These juveniles are about 10 weeks old right now. They are jet black, and they have a black bill. They won't fledge the nest till about 16 weeks, and they will be almost equally in size to what their parents are. Same like when we see herons and egrets. All the birds in the birding world, they are the same size as their parents when they leave the nest. The one thing that they lack are flight muscles because they've never flown, and they lack proper color because just by age they haven't developed into adulthood yet. In this particular eagle that's up to the top and right, that is the male that flew in. The female was taking care of the young there at the nest and providing security, but the male flew in, and he's holding his wings open right now. This was a little bit cooler of a day, and they're facing west on this particular nest, and he's just capturing some warmth from that wonderful sunlight. At this particular location, you can see that they have a canopy slightly over the top of them, and that is at the southwestern corner of their nest. Typically, a bald eagle will always utilize and build a nest inside of a tree that has a canopy, and normally those are very large cypress trees or our pine trees. All right, so one other special bird that we'll talk about today is the swallowtail kite. Many of us have been able to see swallowtail kites just now starting to show up, and the swallowtail kites are extremely active, and they come to us as well from Brazil, just like the purple martins. They do love to eat insects. They eat snakes, rodents, and lizards, all that would be inside of tree canopies. One of the things that's special about the swallowtail kite is that the adults, they are monogamous, and they come back to the exact same nesting site year after year. For many, many years on this particular property, right outside your back gate there on Williams Road, was an enormous roosting site for them. And after Hurricane Charlie and Wilma, they started moving around in different locations. There was just a few of them there. And then post-Hurricane Irma, the entire colony has moved, but they have not moved very far. If you are out on 41 and you go over to Coconut Point Mall in the afternoon hours, look behind Best Buy in that big open preserve back there behind Best Buy area. Just about the time the sun is going down, you're likely to see many dozen of them back there flying because that's a roosting site for them as well. In this particular video shot, this is an adult that's there preening, and that's a juvenile calling out. Begging for food is what it's doing. In the morning hours, whenever the swallowtail kites prepare themselves for the day, their roosting sites usually always face to the east, being able to capture as much sunlight as possible first thing in the morning. And we can tell that this is an adult on the left-hand side that was preening, because if you look at the tail feathers, see how elongated these feathers are? That defines the adult, where a juvenile has much shorter type of a feather, pronounced feathers there in the back. And this juvenile is just here trying to mimic exactly what the adult was doing by preening and getting itself ready for the day. So keep your eyes peeled, because there are plenty of them out there flying in right now from South America. All right. Well, folks always ask, hey, how can we continue to stay involved? Well, you definitely have your own wonderful property right here in this urban green space here at Pelican Sound. Everything from your nature trail that you can go observe such wonderful opportunities on. But while you're out on the golf course, you also have some wonderful opportunities all between golf holes, being able to see wildlife and the birds that are going to use that. They could either be down low in the native scrub habitat in your palmettos, or maybe they're over on the river's edge and able to be out there in those different type estuarine areas. But otherwise, I would recommend that you look at Big Cypress National Park as a good place to go. Conservancy of Southwest Florida. You have Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, which is on the National Audubon Society trails system. And CREW, most certainly CREW. I always keep a close and keen eye out on CREW, which is Corkscrew Regional Ecosystem Watershed. And that's our dear friend Brenda Brooks, who comes here to co-tour with us. And you're able to see her on a regular basis as well and ask plenty of questions, because that's the 60,000 acres that surrounds Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. So we also have the Florida Wildlife Commission that helps us out with many special questions and needs on birds and wildlife that we have here in Florida. And maybe you want to go to Ding Darling. You want to see those big, beautiful white pelicans that are here right now. It is a great location to be able to go to. And one thing I want to remind you, when you go to Ding Darling, if you're looking to see the white pelicans or rosette spoonbills, make sure that you go at low tide. So check your tide before you head out there, because that's going to depict a lot about what you're going to see at that particular location. And if you get out there and it happens to be high tide, your ticket is good for all day. Maybe go up to Captiva Pass or something and go get lunch, and then come back down to Ding Darling and try it again and catch it at low tide. Another one is Rookery Bay down in Old Naples area. That's an absolute wonderful location to go see wildlife as well. We do have Courchand State Park that's right here next to us. So there's many, many opportunities about being able to get outside and see our beautiful opportunities for your wildlife, and all of your walk paths here too. I see so many people here at the club. It's absolutely very, very active, walking the paths and all the beautiful trees that harness the birds and activity, but also going down the power lines, because you're able to see your gopher tortoises back there in different unique situations where it's considered high and dry. But with that, I appreciate you all being tuned in and having a little fun with me this afternoon and enjoying some of the birds and the wildlife species that I get to see on your property. And this is an aggressive nesting time of the year for us. So if you happen to see me out on the golf course blazing through with a ladder, that's exactly what I'm doing, is checking your birdhouses for your activity to see how well they are producing, and being able to share those back right here to the club and let them send out all that wonderful information to you. If you want to get a hold of me, my information is right there. I'm happy to receive any phone calls or emails. But if you like just watching things on social media, you can find us on YouTube. We have a big YouTube channel where you can see lots of neat little videos that tell us about our wonderful findings that we have out there. But on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter as well. And just make sure you look it up as Native Bird Boxes, because that's where all that fun stuff gets put. Thank you all for tuning in today. Appreciate it.
Brian, thank you so much. This was a wonderful presentation. We do have a couple folks that have questions, and
Sure.
we're going to be allowing them live.
Okay.
I know that some of you folks already have been part of Sound Learnings for the past couple of months, so you know that I am going to be now releasing a poll, and we would like for you to take that poll and let us know how we did. That would be wonderful. And Patricia Yoakum was the first one to raise hand. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. I just wanted to know how I can get on one of your bird tours here.
Well, those will all be organized here through the club. So your best thing is, I don't know how, Aga, how you all set everything up, but it would be going through Aga and or the schedule here at the club to be able to get on those birding tours.
We have a couple left for this season. You can find reservations available for those under upcoming events. So when you go under upcoming events and type in nature tour, they will all should be able to come up. The afternoon ones, we do not offer golf carts. You do need to provide your own golf cart because we do have quite a bit of a crowd on the golf courses. But in the morning at 7 o'clock, everybody is allowed to use our golf carts, and you will go with Brian and you will tour the property and hear all the wonderful things about birds and wildlife. Anina, go ahead and mute yourself.
Hi, thank you so much. I just wanted to say I volunteer at the 6 Mile Slough.
Okay,
It's
wonderful.
just above Daniels, so it's a lot closer for our people to get to go to see all this wonderfulness that you've described for us today. Now, also, I have been under for years that we're not allowed to put out feeders or houses here by our places. Is that still true?
That would have to be a community question. That's not something I have part of. We would have to find out other information through the community on that.
Okay.
So the answer would be the question should be directed to either Travis or Eric. I believe we would be able to answer that question for you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Of
it.
course. Anybody else has a question? Again, please don't forget about submitting your poll. I see fabulous ratings because I cannot even imagine if somebody would have been giving anything else but 5 to this fabulous presenter, and we definitely are going to be begging him to come back in times to come. But if you do have questions, this is the time to ask them.
It's a busy time of the year with birding, I promise. This is anybody asks that what is the best time of the year to see birds? You are in the apex of it right now for our region. Every bird that would be migratorily here is here right now.
All right. Well, Brian, we thank you so very much for. Oh, go ahead, Anina.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
We wanted to have one of those platforms put up over by Island Sound. How do we get that? Who do we talk to in Pelican Sound to put up a platform over by their swimming pool? There used to be one and it got knocked down, and we'd like it back again to see if somebody would come and use it.
Are you talking about an Osprey platform?
I guess so. I don't know what was there, but it was fantastic. You'd be in the pool and watch them flying around, and it was lots of fun.
Well, I would lead that direction towards Johnny and Eric. Then for the question for more specific, because I'm not certain where you are in the community for that. And that would be something for Eric and Johnny. So then that way budgetarily, and we can start looking at those opportunities for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You bet.
Brian, thank you so much for looking after us and looking after all of our wildlife and all the birds, and doing all the fabulous job that you do every day for the ecosystems of all the birds at Pelican Sound. We very much appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.